Good evening, everyone. Before we start the meeting, can I ask that any members or officers in attendance with an electronic device mute it to avoid feedback? To any guests attending remotely via Teams, please could you keep your camera and microphone off unless you wish to speak, and ideally not use the camera at all, as this can affect the quality of the IT connection. Please be advised that this meeting may be recorded, and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. In addition, the recording may be added to the Council website. If any councillors are accessing the meeting remotely, it's advised that you use your Swale or KCC laptop to participate. If you join using the link on the website or on a mobile or tablet device, it is not always possible to identify you, and you may not be recorded as being in remote attendance. Please can members speak loudly and clearly into their microphones and switch their microphone off after speaking to enable remote participants to hear the next speaker. Welcome everyone to the Environment and Climate Change Committee on the 3rd of October 2024. And welcome to any councillors and members of the public joining us remotely this evening. In addition to the members of the committee, we have the following officers in attendance with us this evening: Head of Environment and Leisure, Martin Cassell; Building Operations and Maintenance Manager, Deborah Hardy; Janet Dart, Policy and Engagement Officer, is attending remotely; and for Democratic Services, we have Kelly McKenzie. Please be advised that no fire drill is planned this evening. If the alarm sounds, those in attendance should leave via the exits indicated and assemble outside where directed. Do not use the lift. If anyone in attendance requires extra assistance, please make yourselves known to us so that we can assist. And no one does. Good. Kelly, do we have any apologies for absence or substitutes this evening?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Roger Clark, Councillor Ashley Shield, his substitute is Councillor Tony Winklis, Councillor Julian Speed, his substitute is Councillor Peter Marchington, Councillor Claire Martin, Councillor Pete Neal. Councillor Ashley Wise has advised that he is running late, but there's a few problems with the train, but he will be here, just a little late. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Before we move on to the next agenda item, I'm just going to give a quick update that I was given this afternoon. As some of you may know, our 2020 Climate and Ecological Emergency Action Plan outlined or intended for the Council to deliver climate awareness training to staff and members, enabling them to take action relevant to their roles, being more mindful of carbon and climate change. Members of this committee are invited to attend the first holding sessions of carbon literacy training in December. The training will be split across 2 sessions on the evenings of the 9th and 17th of September, and members will need to attend both sessions to achieve carbon literacy certification, but there is still a good amount of value in attending either session if you can only attend one and not the other. And it could well be that when sessions are held in the new year for a wider cohort of members, you can attend, if you've attended the first, you can attend the second in the new year and get the certification. And officers will be in touch shortly to provide the itinerary and formally offer committee members places on that course. I attended a course held by an external provider earlier in the year, and it is very, very useful, so I can recommend it. And on to minutes from the last meeting. Does everyone agree the minutes from the last meeting? Great, that's good stuff. And on to item 4, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest on items on the agenda? No? Great stuff. Okay, item 5, we're rocketing through. Waste scrutiny update, and this isn't that long, just a short verbal update on the progress of the scrutiny review panel so far. As I'm sure you're all aware, a decision was taken at the Environment Committee meeting in July to undertake a scrutiny review of the waste and street cleansing contract. Since that time, the Scrutiny Review Panel has convened a total of 4 times, initially for a preparatory meeting in early August to set out the schedule and timetable for the review, and then for a further 3 sessions throughout September, each of them looking in detail over the course of 4 hours at a different aspect of the waste contract and the changeover period. The first of those detailed sessions focused on the resources and staffing in place to manage the changeover period effectively, primarily looking at the council side, but also looking on the contractor side. In the second session, we looked at the initial revised routes implemented by Suez, as well as data and other operational questions that have arisen since the changes were made. At the most recent session, the most recent session involved a closer look at the decisions made by the Council before, during and after the tendering process and the creation and implementation of the contract. The sessions have been very productive and informative, and I'm pleased to report from the sessions so far we've identified a good number of recommendations to take forward, as well as a growing list of questions to put to representatives from Suez at one of the remaining sessions, which will be a key element of creating our conclusions for the report. Following discussion at our most recent meeting, Councillor Perkins suggested that whilst the sessions so far had been productive, the timetable for the remaining sessions, both of which were due to take place next week, and the creation of the report would not afford us sufficient time to guarantee that the task at hand was undertaken with the level of care and attention it deserved. This sentiment was shared by the panel. It was also noted that a considerable improvement in bin collections in the weeks since the new routes were implemented in mid-September, even if not in the wards of the members of the panel itself, has perhaps helped to reduce the sense of urgency that members were feeling to publicly provide answers as soon as possible. To that end, a proposal is on the agenda this evening to extend the period of the scrutiny review and bring the draft review to the January meeting of this committee rather than to an extraordinary meeting in November. If agreed, this extension will allow us to hold an additional session prior to our meeting with Suez to ensure that the questions we put to them are as thorough and robust as possible and backed up where appropriate with specific examples from over the past few months. We intend to share these questions with Suez well ahead of the meeting to ensure that they come prepared with the answers and the information we're looking for. In closing, I'd like to thank my fellow panel members for their dedication and thoughtful input throughout the process, and I look forward to our continued work as we aim to ensure, as far as possible, that the pain of the last few months is not repeated again in our borough. Thank you. And to that end, I will propose that, given that I've largely introduced item 7 on the agenda with this update, that we bring item 7, the deferral request, forward ahead of item 6, the solar panels. So bear with me while I find it. It's probably just one page at the back of this.
29.
Thank you. Okay. Agenda item 7 is the deferral request, as I just mentioned, which is the recommendation is to agree that the waste and street cleansing scrutiny review report timelines are extended, and the report is presented and discussed at the Environment and Climate Change Committee meeting on 15th of January 2025 instead of 20th of November 2024. And to explain or give background on that would merely be to just repeat part of what I just gave in my verbal update, but I'm happy to take questions if anyone has any, or open the floor to debate. Councillor Winkless.
Thank you, Chair, for your comprehensive report there. I'm fully in favour of it coming back in December, but I do have a couple of points. Yeah, I do have a couple of points to bring up. We get the daily report back on it on the various wards. I know the Milton Regis ward has got a lot better because I've been monitoring it very closely myself. I think that's probably the officers know. But there has still been a certain amount of delay. So there have been a couple of times since I've had to report these things. But I've also noticed that other councillors are not on this committee. I've also had issues and problems still, as my observations in the rural areas, I think Newington was one that come up this week. So hopefully, we will get some total satisfactory conclusion to it.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, I agree completely that the service is still not yet perfect, but it is hugely improved. My personal experience is that now, since the reroute, officers are able to provide more information in a more timely manner. They're able to spend more time chasing those. And it's incredibly frustrating that there are the persistent issues. There are the ones that have been missed for the past few months that are still being missed. And there are some, particularly one village I know, that had been missed for months, and then just through August they'd finally got it sorted and they thought, oh brilliant, we're there now. And then the reroute, they've started getting missed again, which is just obviously just infuriating for them. But as I said, these issues are fewer than they were previously, and the officers are able to be much more on top of it. We're seeing a lot more, certainly as a representative of some of the rural areas, I'm seeing a lot more missed bins being collected the following day or within 2 days, whereas before it was hit and miss whether it even got collected within 2 weeks, which is, for me, is a huge step up. But your comments are noted. Thank you. I'll take you in the order I saw you. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. The brown bins, do they automatically get extended, because obviously they pay for them, the weeks credited to them? Do they have to notify you, or do you know that they've been missed?
That's a very good question. Our work on that is still ongoing, but certainly if a bin is missed, a garden waste bin is missed and reported, that does not count as notification. That is notification that the bin has been missed. If someone has reported a bin as missed and it is still not collected within 2 weeks and they contact the council again, then an extension can be put on that contract, and that is something that I would recommend residents to do. Having said that, we are hoping to undertake some work to identify exactly how many brown bin collections have been missed over the past few months and do a blanket reimbursement for everyone. So it's difficult to say, yes, report that now and you'll get the extension. If we were able to get the data that we want, we should be able to provide the blanket extension so that members of the public aren't having to do an extra task to get the reimbursement or the contract extension that they're entitled to.
Thank you, because I think it's very unfair if the onus falls on the...
Absolutely, I agree. Councillor Worcester.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to bring this up here, or more than happy to bring it up when we discuss the forward decision-making plan. With the deferral, I'm wondering if we can have a look at what we can bring forward to the November meeting that would fill that slot, because looking at that, we're leaving ourselves quite light for what's going to happen for the agenda, and I want our agendas to be interesting, full and productive, but I'm more than happy to bring this back at that particular point when we look at it.
I imagine the intention will be to cancel the 20th of November meeting, because that was an extraordinary meeting primarily for the scrutiny review. So if that is not on that agenda, but we can have that discussion after the meeting, but that's noted.
So the next question then, off the back of that, is looking at how busy the forward planning looks for January. How are we going to look at that? And maybe that's something we could bring back in our separate conversations with officers to make sure that that work is being looked at and given the right consideration at the same time of fitting in the scrutiny review in the January meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Noted. Thank you. Councillor Wise.
Thank you, Chair. First off, I totally agree with postponing this. I feel that when this was set up, panel members were setting themselves quite an ambitious task, and I'm in favour of having those sorts of ambitious goals, but also don't feel that therefore there's any issue with asking for extra time, because clearly we've seen that there's been lots of public response to this, so there's a lot of public interest in this, so therefore I support the panel in wanting to do the job properly, and I thank the panel for the work they're undertaking actually, because it's clearly quite a piece of work that you are doing. Just following on from what my colleague Councillor Winklis said, just an opportunity to sort of bring this up, whilst definitely all of the general service that we're getting on Fridays, the wards on Fridays, has improved. And as you point out, where there are miscollections, they are largely being collected the next day, which is good news. But we still come back to this issue that we do not get an update on a Friday as Friday ward members. So when people are contacting us on a Friday afternoon or Friday evening, if we know that sewers are already clear, that those areas have been missed and are being allocated to the Saturday, we aren't able to relay that information. We don't get anything until Monday evening. And it has been it's been a repeated issue that makes it more difficult for us to sort of communicate with residents if this is already in hand, which it generally is, but we're not able to tell them that because we don't know anything. So I just want to sort of make that point again. Thank you.
I'll let Martin come back on that one.
Thank you, Councillor Wise. Firstly, I know we've had lots of conversations late on a Friday, so I'm definitely pleased to hear that improvements in your ward have been happening. As you're aware, obviously Council took a decision for officers not to work on a Friday afternoon, and that is the main reason why we don't have the updates coming out on a Friday. What I would say is there will hopefully come a point where we don't need to send councillors the daily updates, because we are getting much closer to business as usual. So for those that are seeing the statistics coming out, when we do over 70,000 collections in a week, there are always going to be missed collections, whether they happen on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday or Friday. There are reasons that happen, whether that be a breakdown of a vehicle, a new driver, a new crew member not quite doing it, or genuinely just somebody focused on something else and missing a bin. So it's standard practice that there will be occasions, there will be days where bins are missed. The importance is that you guys are get the assurance that when the resident reports it through the right tools, that they are getting the recovery, and we heard from Councillor Lehman how we are getting much better at the missed collections the day or two after. But also, what assurance I can give you is that we absolutely do know, and Suez absolutely do know, the bins that they're missing, because the quantum is much smaller. The planning of the catch-up routes and the Saturday work is much more efficient than it has been. So I really hope that there will be a time where no day of the week we'll get the update, but the main reason for that Friday afternoon is because there is physically not that officer base to provide that update for you.
Councillor Perkin.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was just I'm thankful to the people that have said yes. It would be lovely to have an extension. It is a lot of work, and also there's such a huge number of documents that are really important to make sure that we've gone through properly, so that we're able to really get into the weeds of the issues. And I think good scrutiny is always best when you've got enough time to do that more effectively. One of the main things that this is going to give us some extra time to do is to go through the public responses, which have been massive. I think there's been about 1,800 public responses. So that will not only give officers enough time to properly understand the impacts of the service change on members of the public, but also gives us a really good steer to understand the impacts as well, because I think we've looked at the data side of it and we've looked at the contractual side of things, but giving us enough time to really understand the impacts on people's lives and the way that they've been impacted is really important. So thanks for all the positive noises towards extending the panel. I think it'll make it a much better document in the end.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments, or would someone like to? Councillor Marchington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know I'm only subbing, but it's to let you know that we do stay in touch with it all. I think we're compulsory most of it. I agree with the fact you need to delay, because until you establish a contract baseline you can maintain, even though it's still got faults, you haven't got anything to base what the whole system can and can't do, and then start looking at the faults backwards. You know, you've got to have that baseline for about 3 months. It remains constant, or near enough, which can be improved on, as you know, but before you can base what was going wrong and what caused it and what the effects of other things were. You know. Thank you.
Thank you. Would someone like to propose the recommendation? Sorry, Councillor Stephen, there's 3 hands went up behind you. I will take Councillor Jackson as the proposer. Seconder, I mean, it was a tie between Councillor Worcester and Councillor Winkliss, but Councillor Winkliss announced verbally, I'll second, so he's clearly very keen. And in that case, we will go to the vote. Could I see hands for those in favour? That is unanimous, thank you. So that is decided that we will extend the process, which will involve, I kind of said it in my update, but not in the introduction of this item, that will afford us to have an additional session as well as extending the timelines, which will hopefully greatly strengthen the results and the outcome of that review in terms of the strength of the report. Thank you. And then moving back to agenda item 6, which is solar panels on Swale House. Deborah, would you like to introduce this report?
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to recommend to the Policy and Resources Committee to allow and delegate to the Director of Resources to use reserves up to £100,000 to invest on a save to save basis to provide solar panel coverage on Swale House with a payback of no more than 5 years. And also to delegate to the Director of Regeneration and Neighbourhoods the preparation and award of the contract for delivery of the solar panels on Swale House, subject to the agreement of Recommendation 1. So this report sets out the business case where it's an invest to save for the installation of the solar panels on Swale House. And part of the Climate Emergency Action Plan, we were investigating ways to retrofit Swale House. We did the extra installation, the triple glazing, and this is another part, the solar PV. So, as I say, we've done the installation and the glazing works, and that has generated our display energy certificate has gone up from a C to a B, so that's good. The council took on we got a piece of work to undertake whether it was financially viable as a business case to install solar panels on Swale House, and that report is attached, which sets out what we can do here. So the proposals are to recommend that we can use reserves up to £100,000 and to delegate to the Director of Regeneration the preparation of the award, if it's recommended. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Councillor Worcester.
Just a comment, Chair, that I'm particularly pleased to see this coming forward, and I would hope this would stand as a good example to other committees on Swale about having real aspiration to fulfilling the brief of making sure that this council continues with financial sustainability, and also looking at aspirational ways of increasing what we can do without removing services to residents. So I'm really pleased to see this. Thank you for the officers' creativity and thank you for the hard work. It's been very nice to watch. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perkin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So, being honest, the first time I looked at this paper, I felt a bit squeamish about spending £100,000 out of reserves on anything. But now that I read it better, I understand it a little bit more. That is to put us in a financial position where we will be gaining finances after that payback period. So, fully supportive. I think it really helps towards our climate emergency goals, and as Councillor Worcester said, puts us in a better financial position in the future. So it's a no-brainer for me. Fully supportive.
Thank you. And just off the back of that, I can say, I don't think it's particularly confidential to say that budget meetings generally involve looking at how you can close a budget gap. To know that we can be doing something positive, and that maybe that will be closed by £20,000 to £30,000 a year by doing something positive rather than by removing something. Echoing Councillor Worcester's thoughts is just a huge positive, and I'm hopeful that this will prove to be very successful, and that we can then look at rolling it out at other properties in our estate.
Other councils could learn from you.
Well, to be fair, other councils have done it before us, but yeah, we're still potentially early enough to be an early adopter rather than a laggard. Councillor Sarah Stephen.
Yeah. For me, this is fantastic because I've been following the project right through from the beginning, because I was with my property and regen hat on. I was at the beginning of the Swale House, everything, and I've been in the climate emergency subgroup, and so to me to see it coming up and it's actually going to happen is just really amazing. So obviously fully support it. It's lovely to see a project come to a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is an absolutely brilliant idea. It can't come quickly enough, and I would even progress it to a little bit further by saying, why don't we put canopies over the car park, over the cars, and have solar panels on there as well, as they do in other parts of Europe. And as somebody who has solar panels on her house, we have really noticed a big difference. Not only do we supply the national grid with what we produce over and above what we need, but they actually pay us for it as well. So, and we have really noticed quite a big difference. So 100% all for it. And thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you. And I'm sure Martin will confirm, if I ask him to, that I have been hassling him about solar panels over car parks and just anything that a Swale Borough Council own. And yeah, like I said, I'm hoping that this will progress and we can look at those options in due course. Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to see that. Martin.
I can indeed confirm that Rich asked me most meetings that we have. One of the complications with canopies is obviously if you're putting it on a roof, you don't need a structure to hold it up. Whereas if you're putting it over with cars parking under, you need a fair amount of steel to hold it up, and that means the payback periods are much longer. Doesn't mean that it's not possible, just means that it makes less financial sense to invest in that immediately, while we do the rest of the properties that don't need that. But certainly we've been looking at the similar projects at the multi-storey car park and various other properties. So the aim very much on this is, if you did take the time to read the very complicated specification that I'm certainly not an expert on, within there is some really nice software that allows us to really get to some real-time information about when it's effective, when it's not effective, how we can release it to the grid. And so once we get our head round that, then there's definitely going to be an incentive to roll that out on other properties. Certainly with my leisure hat on, I'm looking at how much utility use we make in the leisure centres. It would be a prime places to consider that some of the rest of our property as well. So yeah, absolutely something we're looking at in terms of that.
And if we'd had it a few years ago, it might have been heavy enough to stop the roof blowing off. Sorry. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Councillor Paul Stephen?
When's it going to happen? Have we got a date?
That is a good question. I think we need to agree it first now. But yeah, it's a fair question.
Yeah.
After this, if this is agreed, we need to go to Policy and Resources on the 16th of October, and then we're ready to go out to tender, if need be. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Normally at this point I would ask for a proposer, but I'm very attached to this, so I'm going to propose the recommendation myself. Can I have it? And Sarah Stephen is seconding that. Could we go to the vote, please? Can I see show of hands for those for? That is unanimous. Fantastic. Thank you. And that is agreed. So item 8 on the agenda is the forward plan. Did you want to say something on this, Martin, regarding?
Yeah, it was to pick up on Councillor Worcester's earlier comment, actually. So I think very definitely it's not a must that the climate report comes on the 20th. We had originally intended for it to go to the January meeting, but because the 20th of November was added, we felt we could bring an early draft to this committee. We can absolutely deal with that still by sending an early draft electronically to the committee, so you're still getting to see it early. So I would absolutely advocate not having the extraordinary meeting in November. In terms of the build-up of reports that creates in January, you'll notice that a number of them I've hedged my bets in January and March. Generally, that means that I'm not particularly confident that it will get to January. So I would imagine that both the open spaces strategy and the action plan part of the climate and ecological emergency will be heading towards March as opposed to January. So that does free up some time on the January agenda if councillors are happy.
Does anyone else have any comments on the forward plan? Councillor Worcester.
Sorry, Chair. I just want to make sure that we get this paperless one done as quickly as possible, because every single meeting that we have, and I'm being educated every time by my chair, which is fantastic. Thank you, Rich. I feel that we're doing a bit of a disservice to this by leaving it. It could have an immediate effect now, and it would actually, no offence, but put our money where our mouth is with environment, and I think we could set a really good example here. So if that one can be focused upon, I'd be really grateful. Thank you.
Am I right in saying that that's the one that is most likely to come to the January meeting?
Assuming colleagues support you in bringing it forward, Chair, it's ready to go.
Right. Councillor Perkin.
Yeah, I fully support that. I think it's the most uncontroversial thing that's ever happened at the council since I've been here. So I appreciate that coming forward as soon as possible.
Indeed. Anyone else? Councillor Winkless.
Yeah, I have a slight point to bring up on this one. Probably speaking on behalf of myself, I actually need paper copies, and I've had this discussion before that people that need paper copies, or council that need paper copies, might be in a minority but should still have one.
There is no disagreement with that.
Yeah,
the proposal is to make the default paperless, but anyone who requests a paper copy can have a paper copy.
I just want to clarify it was still there. Thank you.
Great. If there are no other comments or questions, I will call the meeting to a close at 7:35. Thank you.